Arrested Development, Howard Hughes, and Marie Antoinette are all on this day. Welcome back to On This Day. Today's date is November 2nd, 2022. It is the 306th day of the year. You got 59 days left in 2022. It is the 44th Wednesday in the 44th week and the 42nd day of fall. You got 49 days till winter. Today is National Ohio Day. On November 2nd, National Ohio Day recognizes the 17th state to join the Union. Ohio is known as the Buckeye State. It's also known as the mother of modern presidents. It is also the first state from the Northwest Territory to join the United States. Before the Europeans got here, Ohio was primarily populated by the Kickapoo, Erie, and Shawnee people. Ohio has 312 miles of Lake Erie shoreline as its northern border. Did you know Lake Erie is the 12th largest lake in the world? I didn't know that. I was actually going to be in Ohio on Halloween this year, but we put it off. I'm a big Cleveland Browns fan, and they played the Cincinnati Bengals on Halloween this year, 2 nights ago, and I decided that we had other things going on. I'll try again next year. All right, let's see what else November 2nd has given us. 1920 in the United States, KDKA of Pittsburgh starts broadcasting as the first commercial radio station. The first broadcast is the results of the 1920 United States presidential election. In that election, Warren G. Harding of Ohio defeated Governor James M. Cox of Ohio. Warren G. Harding's vice president or running mate was Calvin Coolidge, and James Cox, running mate or would have been his vice president, was FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt. 1947 in California, designer Howard Hughes performs the maiden and only flight of the Hughes H-4 Hercules, also known as the Spruce Goose, the largest fixed-wing aircraft ever built. It held on to that record till April 13th, 2019. That is when the Strato launch had its first flight. 1966, the Cuban Adjustment Act comes into force, allowing 123,000 Cubans the opportunity to apply for permanent residence in the United States. 1967, the Vietnam War, U.S. President Lyndon B. Johnson and the wise men conclude that the American people should be given more optimistic reports on the progress of the Vietnam War. Now, this is very interesting. At the time, President Johnson knew that we needed to get out of Vietnam. I mean, I think everyone knew we needed to get out of Vietnam at the time, but they continued the war anyway. President Johnson was told by Defense Secretary Clark Clifford that the Vietnam War was a real loser. President Johnson was still uncertain, they say, about the course of action, so he decided to convene a 9-man panel of retired presidential advisors. The group, which later would be known as the Wise Men, included respected General Omar Bradley, Matthew Ridgway, distinguished State Department figures like Dean Ashton, along with McGregor Bundy, National Security Advisor to both Kennedy and Johnson administrations. This group, known as the Wise Men, actually started right after World War II. Some people came, some people went. But when Johnson went to get their input, there was 9 of them. After 2 days of deliberation, the group reached the consensus. They advised against any further troop increases and recommended that the administration seek a negotiated peace. They say Johnson was furious about their conclusions, but eventually calmed down and realized it was the smart way to go. 1983, U.S. President Ronald Reagan signs a bill creating Martin Luther King Jr. Day. 2016, the Chicago Cubs defeat the Cleveland Indians in the World Series, ending the longest Major League Baseball championship drought, 108 years. The history of baseball is a very interesting subject, even if you're not a sports fan. Ken Burns did a great documentary series about baseball. If you ever get a chance, watch that. Just the stories and, it's not as big a deal as it is these days. But back in the 40s, 50s, and even the 60s a little bit, those players were heroes. Everybody knew every player. Everybody knew their stats and how good they were, and there was arguments about who was better. It was a great time for Major League Baseball. I think there's just so many other things for people to do nowadays. It's not getting the attention it probably deserves. I think one of the biggest problems these days, the players just move to other teams too often, and, local communities and kids and stuff, they don't get that bond that they did in the old days with Joe DiMaggio and Yogi Berra. Premiered on November 2nd, 2003, Arrested Development. This is a 6-time Emmy Award-winning series about an adult son who runs his family's real estate business. The show originally aired on Fox until 2006, but was revived on Netflix in 2013. I never saw it when it first ran, but I went back and watched it. It is a very, very interesting comedy. It's very quirky. The show is narrated by film director Richie Cunningham, or Ron Howard. Born on November 2nd, 1755, Marie Antoinette, French queen from 1774 to 1792. She was the wife of Louis XVI. Like Louis XVI, she was executed. Yeah, the French people decided they had had enough of the whole monarchy thing, and so they decided to dispatch these two a few months apart, January and October. He was convicted of high treason, and she was a scapegoat for the French financial crisis. They blamed her lavish lifestyle. She was pretty much just a party girl. Kristen Dunst played her in the movie Marie Antoinette. It was a pretty good movie. Died on November 2nd, 1992, Hal Roach, actor and filmmaker who produced Laurel and Hardy and the Our Gang series. That's what most people know him from, is his days of directing and producing The Little Rascals. Before he became a real actor and director and all that stuff, he was an extra in a lot of silent films. He was born on January 14th, 1892 and died on November 2nd, 1992, a little over 100 years old. Remember Spanky from Our Gang? Hal Roach was 36 when Spanky was born. Hal Roach died 7 months before Spanky. Hal Roach died on this day in 1992 in his home in Bel Air of pneumonia. All right, that's today's video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope you got some information out of it. Now go out, have a great day, and be nice to each other.